communication piece around asking for help, I think, is key. Obviously, how you phrase it. Also, I think when, I have tried to get a lot better at being more proactive in terms of support required. Like as a consultant, you'll get projects and you'll get timelines. And I've tried to be, and so the skill I'm using is really pausing. That someone will say to me, imagine your leader comes to you and says, I want project X completed. Many people's instinct is to like say, yep, cool. And they'll, and accept a prescribed deadline, prescribed timelines. And instead, I'm trying to, in my work over the last decade or so, and it's proven to be excellent because then I not only deliver on time, but I usually over deliver or even a few days in advance, but I take that moment to pause and think, okay, and not just what are the other work commitments I have going on in the next 6 weeks, but how am I physically feeling? What is my emotional level of wellness at the moment? Do I have, am I going to still, if I'm making time for exercise, nutrition, seeing my friends, when can I realistically get this stuff done? What kind of support resources would I need from that person? Like considering myself as a holistic person and then providing more realistic kind of proactive timelines or support needs.
Yeah, because I think in your mind you always go to, oh yeah, I can achieve this, this, and this, and I think going back to the fact that like I'm still always harder on myself, and I still have to like catch myself when those thoughts are in my head, like I'm full-time into my PhD, and what the hell have I done to my career? Those thoughts come in, and then I have to catch myself and say, stop. You can't be full-time in your career, full-time mom, and full-time job. You know what I mean? Like you have to pick. So one thing that I've been doing that really helped me in terms of understanding also what you can accomplish in a day is like this. I take my journal, like I still have like I like paper. So for this. So you have your calendar for the day, and I start out with today's targets, and I break them up with like my PhD and personal and any other activity. And then I develop, I write every morning, okay, what are the top things that I want to accomplish? And then along the side, I write out, what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. And when I first started out, it was like, I'm going to accomplish this, like ridiculous amount of things, right? And then I started tracking like as I was progressing through the day. And then it was like, yeah, I'm doing this. But then I got this email that says that because we brought an investment property, you have to do this, and this for that. And then you start to see where you get sidetracked off, but you also start to see that you're already setting yourself up for failure every single day when you say, oh, in your head, I'm going to achieve these 3-5 things. Even one thing, I'm going to achieve this one thing, but this one thing is like huge. Yeah. And then you always, in the end of the day, feel like, oh, like I didn't do it. And so what I've done is like over the time, like set more realistic expectations of, okay, it may not look like a lot, but I'm going to do these 2 things, and maybe not even
finish it. Look like a lot. Like, who are we worried about judging us? Like,
ourselves.
Expectations, and I'm worried that some voice, like some non-existent person, is going to judge me about it.
It's true though, because you judge, and you're like, oh my God, another like. But then where others might be like, holy crap, like
exactly.
I doing my PhD. We had 4 properties in Florida that we completely renovated and rented out, and then another property here, and like in my head it's like I'm just doing school, but really no, there's been a lot of other stuff too.
And this is the benefit of thinking this self-awareness piece, because I had to really identify whose voice that was. Like everybody around, and it didn't matter. Isn't it insane? Like, it doesn't matter how many people talk about my level of productivity, efficiency. They're like, I'll be ill or something or not feeling well. And my friends will say, oh, it means you're just operating like a normal human. Like, I'll be like, oh, so much tired. Like, oh, so you've actually like slowed down to the speed of a normal person. But it doesn't matter. But I had to realize that is my mother and father's voice in my head, because I grew up in a household with 2 extremely dedicated, hardworking, parents from immigrant families who just work themselves silly, and they had no work-life balance. And so I've had to be like, okay, listen, you're super valuable, voice. Like, I
Yeah.
do want to be productive. I have like such a strong work ethic. I'm so grateful for you, this voice that you have in my head. But like, you need to calm the F down. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna do some yoga. And like, maybe
Yeah.
when you were younger, if you had done some yoga,
Oh
you
my
would.
God. And you know what? Even just doing yoga, it's like I still get in my head like that's half an hour where I could have been doing something else. And it's like you start to realize, yeah, but then because I can easily become a full-time workaholic. I could easily work like all day, all night. And I have in the past where I was, I had the kids, I was working full time and trying to get my MBA. My neighbors would comment about the fact that my lights were still on at 3 in the morning. But then I was also like, I don't remember certain things. Like I don't remember the time. Like, you know, the kids would see me, they'd come and play in my office, but you know, and then you feel guilty about that, but then they're seeing work. So then now they're working hard. So it's like you just can't win. So
No, but be aware. All you want,
yeah,
all presence of mind and reflection, all of these practices, and I think of them as skill sets, Jen. And it's a really great, this is a natural conversation between colleagues and friends about experiences that we've had both as women and as professionals. But it's also, I hope people are listening in terms of tangible behaviors and insights that we've garnered over the years of these experiences. The point of life is not to be perfect, because it's that is a non-existent. I feel the same way about the word happy. Like these things are elusive concepts, and things continuously will change. And
yeah,
nothing is permanent. And so if we are just present and we do our best to reflect, like those voices, they're there, they're useful, but I'm not going to make a decision from that place. I'm going to try to move forward because I'm embodying these skill sets
yeah,
I focus on in education. I want to just ask you though about your doctoral work, because I do think that you are investigating an area that is very innovative, very relevant, prescient in terms of where we're going in the professional. I mean, I think it applies to both education and professional workplaces, but this idea of hybridity. So tell us a little bit more about what it is you're looking at, and some of the things you're interested in exploring in that area.
yeah. So this is like my passion, and it doesn't even feel like work. So I'm really exploring the concept of the hybrid workplace and what impact that it's going to have on female leadership in terms of the barriers and opportunities they have to grow, and as well as what the leadership style is that's going to be required. Because we are taking for granted that, yeah, the COVID, we had to go purely remote. Then many companies are publicly committing to embracing this hybrid workplace. And for a lot of knowledge workers, they're going to have to, because there's companies and our employees are making the decision themselves that they do not want to have to go back to the office, particularly if you're, say, downtown Toronto and you live in the outskirts. You don't want to have to go there every single day. And so if the companies don't adapt to that, then they're going to lose really strong talent. But the fact that that model has changed, so then what does that mean for leadership? And what's really surprising is that, there's this assumption that you can just lead as normal, but really things have changed so much. You have, in my research, there's not one hybrid model. There's not like a selection of even three, four, five, even 10. There's so many different models. And in terms of how you do hybrid, and then, expecting that you would just lead the same way when you have maybe some employees always remote, some employees coming in different times, or you have them all coming in at the same time, but they're not connecting with the other groups.
Mhm.
Like you're getting this siloing. So there's so many different, what's so exciting is that there's so many different elements of unknown, and that there's this like revolution of this new normal that is really at the heart of it, I think, going to allow people to follow their purpose in life, where they don't have to just become this like robot where you get up at 9 o'clock, you work at 9 to 5 and you're in the office and you're not able to successfully balance, work and life, but also in terms of how you work best, right? So, it's amazing to see that, we're trying to kind of identify, where best is it that you have everybody in person versus where best is, somebody being able to focus and sit down and, just get the job done. But then also as a leader, how do you lead people that are, natural introverts that have become even more introverted and kind of pulled back and want to just stick to the remote versus those that like feed on seeing somebody in person, that energy, and is lacking that. There's, people that are, and it's shocking to me that there's not more conversation, or even the individuals that I'm interviewing now that are, not firmly recognizing, yeah, I'm just leading as normal versus you need to look at how you're leading differently because it's completely changed.
I mean, all the different things that have changed and under everyone's feet, it's almost like we're all just jumping from one new rock that's moving to the next new rock that's moving. And so you're highlighting with your research leadership and leadership styles, and by shining a light on it, encouraging people to have those conversations about it, because at the end of the day, there's so many other things that are changing and happening in their lives that it hasn't been necessarily a source of focus or dialogue. And so I'm excited about how your research will change that. It is incredible how many parallels there are between what you're talking about and the evolution of the introduction of technology in education.
Yes.
So like this idea of intentionality again and purpose, but the multiple different representations, the multiple different expressions of what it means to have a technology enhanced educational experience. Are students all coming face to face? Sometimes they're online. Are they moving in cohorts? Like there's a gazillion different interpretations of what this looks like. And then teachers are just teaching the way they've taught forever, leading, that idea of leadership. Like, how do I lead these people versus that person? And from a student standpoint or an employee standpoint, we're really trying to help learners in the education field make more informed decisions. Like they are this idea of disengagement, right? Not putting their video on. This is huge. Like I'm an introvert. I'm displaced. I'm working in a hybrid environment. I'm not going to put how do you engage people like that in the leadership discussion? Like, how are you going to lead, inspire, make sure they're, even manage someone when that's the case around engagement? Like there are incredible. And then how do you make a decision as an employee or as a student? I don't necessarily want to go to campus or the office today, but the thing that I need to go for, I will benefit most from being there in person. So
the fact that you said that's so huge because like one thing that I'm starting to find, and I'm still in the middle of it, so I have to be careful what I say, but one thing I'm really finding is it depends on too, like where you are in your career. So, if say for example, the VPs decide to come in on a Monday and a Friday because it's quiet, they can put their head down, they can get work done, and they can maybe even connect together, then maybe you intentionally and strategically need to decide to make that trip all the way to downtown Toronto and be at your desk and maybe just bump into leadership and start to build a relationship because, you can't get away from like, and just like with education, there's certain things where you naturally will maybe pick up more or be able to ask more questions and get more insight in depth if you're in person.
Well, also the needs are different, right? If I'm in first year university, or I'm a first year associate at a law firm, I need you to remember me. I need to feel a connection to the community and education. I need to feel a sense of belonging and community. And in a professional environment, I need you to know my face. I need you to know my name. I'm new to this community. I need to be part of this community. So there's this kind of like, my needs as an employee or as a learner are different at different stages of my career or educational life cycle. And how do you match that, right?
Yeah.
And to your point earlier too, like, no, go ahead.
Sorry, that's interesting because there is like it's almost matching parallel, like in terms of
because it's humans. It's human behavior. It's mentorship, leadership, education, like it's these processes of people working together in different spaces
Yeah.
and human behavior in these spaces. We have hierarchies in these spaces. You have goals, outcomes, desired outcomes that are very that you can map to these different
Yeah.
experiences. Super interesting. Also, what you're talking about in terms of supporting women specifically, I could see both sides. Like, how does my leadership style
Hmm.
translate in these online work hybrid environments? But also, how am I going to more effectively lead women
Hmm.
who at times have multiple different um, things that can keep them out of the office and choosing hybridity, like
Yeah.
mat leaves or children, or not to say men don't have that same or all the fluid gender identities between the two don't also have responsibilities, but this idea of caregiving an elderly parent, or there can be some unique situations where typically in the literature women have been disadvantaged in terms of not being able to show up on site. So now in this hybrid environment, are we thinking that some of those barriers might be removed?
Yeah, I think that there's definitely I see benefits and disadvantages, right? And so the idea that you know, as a female leader, where before in some industries, there's some large companies where, to get an advancement or career growth, you need to relocate. A lot of that is going away. And because there's this like normalization that it's okay that this person can take that job in New York, but be located in Toronto, fly there every once in a while, but that it's normalized the fact that there can be, virtual connections and you can manage a team from afar, that type of thing. And so I think that there's a lot of growth opportunities from that perspective, and being able to also not, the panic, for example, of like, when you have to pick your child up from daycare and you're in a meeting with like senior executives and you're just like looking at your watch, but you don't want to say anything because you're going to look bad. Like that going away, where you can even have the conversation to say, okay, yeah, I have to leave, or I have to on this specific day because there's something going on. It's normalized for men and women to be like, I'm going to be working from home. But then on the flip side of, if in certain circumstances, and this is like, there's a lot of research that supports the fact that yes, men are taking on a lot more, and they're also able to see a lot more of the non-paid responsibilities that women are taking on, but still the majority falls to the women, and still. And so, and we are getting further behind. And so, the fact that, statistically a lot more women are choosing to spend more time working from home, is that going to be a disadvantage? The fact that they're not being seen as much, building those, like, not just being seen in terms of it in a meeting, but like, grabbing coffee or going for lunch, and, having, building those relationships, or, the fact that somebody's, you're having these colleagues where there's, typically more men showing up in the office, and then they're building stronger relationships and supporting each other maybe a little bit more. Like,
Funny, it's kind
there's
of that
so much
classic,
going
like
on.
the golf example, like if
Yeah.
you didn't play golf and you were a lawyer, it was one of those things where, they're having the FaceTime on the tee and on the golf course, and you have to make sure.
Yeah.
So it's funny how some of those trends and patterns are persisting,
They're
even with,
still there. Yeah.
so there's this hybridity and there are benefits to it, and there's opportunities for growth because of normalized hybrid practices. There's opportunities for flexibility for all human beings
Yeah.
in terms of spending more time working from home should that be necessary. But at the end of the day, business is a human relational endeavor. And so I want to end with this, Jen, because I want to ask you about solutions or innovations in this field. Like, have you seen anything or heard anything, or in your interviews and research thus far, that can help leaders or teachers
Mm-hmm.
working in more hybrid environments cultivate these connections, or employees working from home or in a hybrid space? Like, how do we try to do it? This thing that we do so well when we're together, is there any way that we
Yeah.
can do it somewhat okay over the computer?
I think so. I think that I'll talk about it from first the perspective of the company taking responsibility, and then also as an individual, because that's very important. So first, as a company, where I'm seeing that it's being successful is the companies where the leaders are leading by example, and you're seeing the president of a company, you're seeing his home, you're seeing him with his kids, maybe even that, showing that that's okay to continue, but then also, setting some, and it's going to evolve because it's still evolving with every company I speak with. It's they haven't set on here's our hybrid model, but taking into consideration and reaching out to the employees and making sure that they're building one that makes sense for them and for their organization, but also at the same time making sure that there are certain things in place where employees don't show up to the office and there's nobody there and they sit on Zoom calls. And so where I've seen it go really well is where there's, not firm, thou must be in the office on a Tuesday, but having some structure where it's, teams are able to come together and say, okay, for the marketing team, we're always coming in on a Tuesday, and it's specifically for, strategy and, things like that, where because you want to make sure you're not negatively impacting corporate culture as well, things like that. On from the employees' perspective and from leaders' perspective, it's again taking accountability, being intentional and strategic about, first of all, what's the purpose? What's your purpose for yourself in terms of your career as well, and taking ownership over that, and trying to really see within that, like I said, that example of, if you are okay in your where you want to grow in your career, you're already comfortable, but you want to build, you want to continue to build those relationships, you want to continue to be able to balance, well, it makes most sense where I can be very productive and achieve certain things by, and stay working from home for certain areas, but then also making sure that you are showing up and that you're in the office, because a lot of companies are having a hard time getting people to go back to the office. They're having to like bribe them with food. but the individuals that are like really smart about wanting to grow their career and I've spoken to that have actually successfully achieved that next level, are the ones that have been going in at the right times for the right purposes, not just going in to show up, but like intentionally going in because they knew somebody was there, and that type of thing. I think that's, and one other thing is, as a leader, really adopting a more situational leadership style where you're not just like leading everybody the exact same, but recognizing that you have to now really make the time to understand and each individual's needs based on, a number of things, their skill level, based on what projects they're working on and their ability to do those projects, but also based on, are they introverted? Are they extroverted? Are they working primarily from home? Are they working a lot from the office? What do they need? And making sure that it's a lot more effort, but you need to really apply that situational leadership. That's the one area that I'm seeing opportunity.
And I think it's an excellent takeaway. And it's this kind of, it's the leadership style for uncertain, ebbing and flowing worlds that we wanted to have. We would all like that things are tied neatly with a bow or fit nicely in boxes. And we've had in the past this idea of the carrot and stick leadership style, or this work from home, work for on site. And the world does not work in the black and white. So often it operates in the gray. And if we can better understand as leaders, as educators, as employees, as learners, what it means to operate in the gray, who I am, and what my situation can afford me in terms of getting me where I want to go. And if businesses start to think that way as well, I think we have a chance, Jennifer,
Yeah.
navigating a very uncertain future with agility and less fragility in terms of being able to get where we need to go.
The other thing is that I'm finding is like the word and humanization. It's like the humanization of the workforce and the workplace. And I think that we need to like really lean into that. And one example of organizations really showing like leading by example is, there's some that have been saying, okay, there's no Zoom meetings on a Friday. And also there's some organizations that have said, you can't schedule a Zoom meeting between 12 and 1. And it's like, where they're saying, like a lot of companies are saying, well, we care about your mental health during this change. Because we have to remember, like, there's so much research and studies done on like, how do people embrace change? Like we're still going through so much change. And so like making sure truly people are, not just saying, well, we care about our employees' well-being and their mental health, but actually like allowing for, it's okay, normalizing the fact that it's okay to not have anything on a Friday is really like one example of how you can kind of do that.
Yeah. No, and I think that these have been themes. I know we are ourselves continuing to evolve, and I look forward to seeing where your research and your professional trajectory takes you, Jen. But I honestly think that these have been core elements of who you have been personally and professionally throughout your life. This idea of human connection, relationship building, equity, inclusion, and diversity within leadership and the role that leadership plays in supporting those processes. It's a pleasure to know you and to work with you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to chat today.
Oh, I love talking to you. We can talk for hours. We know that.
Thanks so much. The Education Revolution podcast is produced in-house by community members. And I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Sangera. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and head over to my website to opt in for my newsletter for more ways to connect with some of these big ideas.